Hello, my name is Ryan Eller, and I'm the MIS Program Coordinator here at Cal State Monterey Bay. Each year we kind of have me go through the application, and I talk through not just about completing the application, but things on the application that may be easier to miss if you're maybe not necessarily looking for it, and in some cases just out of surely not knowing that this is information that may be useful. So what I'll try to do is I'm going to set this up into probably a 4-video series where I walk you through each quadrant in the kind of inner workings of CSUMB, for lack of a better term. We kind of terminize this 4 blocks here as the 4-quadrant system of the Cal State Apply application. Almost all of you who are watching this have probably already started your application. If you haven't started an application, I'll be creating a separate video that just shows you kind of from the home page how to get to this application page. Essentially, it would just require you to create an account. But for now, let's start with the application, which is the personal information being the first tab. Most of this information is going to be pre-filled for you. Well, maybe not most of it, but a good deal of it will be pre-filled for you. To start with the release statement, really not much for me to say on this. You're just basically going to allow the release of your contact information to us, the campus, and then also certify that basically everything that you're putting in here is truthful information. From there, you'll get your biographic information. So in my case, since I've obviously created somewhat of a profile section already, some of that is pre-filled for me. You can select to let us know if you have an alternate or preferred name. Doesn't really matter, but if it's something that matters to you, certainly you can change that as you see fit. From there, you can put in your legal sex, and then there are some further identifying questions. They're not terribly relevant to me as a program coordinator, but they might be useful to other offices on campus, so feel free to answer these questions if you so choose, but you don't have to, they're not required. From there, birth information, pretty straightforward, date of birth, where you were born, or if you were born here in the States, kind of where you were born. From there, what you would do once you complete all the information, this is true of every tab, is you would click the Save and Continue, and that would allow you to have this check mark. Most of my applications don't have check marks because I'm not filling it in most circumstances. It's just to show you more than anything else. Contact information, while it's relatively straightforward, the obvious thing here is that you have a current address and then also the option to fill in instead a permanent address if these two differ. This is going to be true of all of these factors within this particular tab, whether it's the current address, permanent address, phone, or email. This is basically the start of your formal student record at CSUMB, or if you end up changing to apply to a different campus, a different CSU, to that said campus. So it's important that you're providing information here that would allow you to receive this information. So the current address is where you're going to end up getting anything mailed to you in most circumstances. You could have stuff sent to your permanent address. It's just usually easier if your current and permanent address are the same. That's my recommendation. Doesn't need to be, would be my recommendation. That way, while it will be relatively rare for you to get mail nowadays, like snail mail instead of email, it's still nice to have that on record correctly, because this is eventually where your diploma would be sent to. From there, though, probably arguably the 2 more important factors is the phone and email section. At the program level, I tend to prefer emailing you all, since that provides a written dated record of our communications. But sometimes I'll call you if it's something that needs a little bit more clarity and could be more easily solved over the phone. In that case, it's great if your preferred phone number is truly your preferred phone number. Sometimes folks will put in their office numbers or other phone numbers that they generally don't use quite as much. It's really helpful if it's a number that you do use. Obviously, we want you to feel comfortable with what phone number you're providing us, and this is also true of your email. But the more that those are both phone and emails that you use more often, the easier that we can communicate with one another and solve problems as need be, or just get the good news to you sooner type thing. Okay, citizenship and residency information, while it's going to be relatively straightforward to most of you, where this becomes a little bit more unique is for students who are planning on getting potentially like an F1 student visa or things of that nature. If you plan on getting a visa, obviously you're going to want to detail where your country of citizenship is. The list is exhaustive. It has every country. You would select which one is relevant to you. With that being said, if you don't have a visa currently, the best selection is none. If you're a U.S. citizen, obviously you would select U.S. citizen. But there's other options available. The most likely is you're either a U.S. citizen, you're either a permanent resident, or you have no visa or some form of visa. I have not seen the refugee status used yet. It may be relevant in your case. If that's the case, please do feel free to select it. If you were born outside the U.S., you're going to just have to provide what year you were born in this follow-up tab. And then in the residency tab, where this becomes important is it's more of a U.S. state residency. So this is important for tuition purposes for the blended program. The differences between the blended and online program in this particular question are pretty stark, because for the blended program, it does qualify. You either qualify as a California state resident tuition, or you qualify as a non-state resident tuition. And those are two vastly different numbers. In that case, it's important to make sure that you do you don't necessarily need to prove California state residency if you're a California state resident, but if you're a non-resident, it is going to change your tuition amount that you'll be paying, and so you do need to reflect that. And really, it's not terribly difficult for us to find out if you are a resident or not, but this is a good place to start in giving us that correct information. For online students, it doesn't matter where you're a resident. You could be a California resident, you could be a resident of a different country, a resident in a different state. You'll be charged the same tuition no matter what. It's a flat rate program. So if you're applying for the online program, it doesn't really matter quite as much. Obviously, it's still good to give us correct information. But certainly, if you are planning on applying to the blended program, answering these correctly the first time can help with a lot of heartache down the road. Okay, race and ethnicity, just demographic information. I'm not going to spend too much time here. Fill this out as you see fit. The other information tab, though, does have some important items, with arguably the most important being the Social Security number. I know nowadays a lot of people are wary about including their Social Security number in online settings. I get that completely. The thing is, though, it's difficult for you to provide us the Social Security number in really any other way. And if you don't provide us the Social Security number, we can't really provide any form of financial aid, loans, whatever that might be, if you plan on receiving those types of funds. So while I absolutely would understand the kind of desire to not put your Social Security number online, my recommendation would be, if you do plan on receiving any type of aid, then go ahead and include your Social Security number in this field right here. I had to do it with my own application when I was applying to a doctoral program a few years back. I wasn't necessarily thrilled about it, but I knew I had to do it. If you don't end up having a Social Security number, you can click the box below. There are other ways to provide us the Social Security number, but it requires you to be on campus. So for online students, there's really no ifs, ands, or buts. You're going to have to include your Social Security number here. If you do plan on spending some time on campus and you really do feel uncomfortable with that, you can just let me know, and we'll work as best we can to make this work out for you. Another important one would be military status. You plan on using VA benefits or GI Bill benefits. If that's the case, you would go ahead and notate that here. And the last items here are the academic standing. You are going to have to include if you were in good academic standing with the last school that you attended, or if you had any conduct issues in the box below. None of these would necessarily disqualify you from the program, but it would probably require for you to either be interviewed by us at the program level, or to potentially even file a petition if need be. I haven't seen this be a problem yet. I doubt it will be a problem now. If this is a concern of yours, it would probably be better to email me or call me at my respective office number, which you can find at our MIST website, csumb.edu/MIST. That might be the safest bet, is to reach out to me so that we can figure that out. Small thing to note here, this is a common question on the Cal State applications for years. The important thing here is even if you plan on getting a credential in the future, I would just for now select not interested in a credential program. It saves you from answering other questions on your application that aren't relevant to you for this particular master's degree program or certificate program, depending on which level you're applying to. So certainly no need to answer any of the credential programs because our program doesn't require one. So there's just no need to go ahead and fill that out. So in that case, I would recommend selecting that first option right there. CalFresh, I'm not terribly familiar with, so answer according to your personal need there. And then the RN license, I'm assuming most of you don't have one or won't need to get one. In that case, you're going to probably want to select no for that, so you don't have to provide those details, which you wouldn't have. And then lastly, it's just a question about how did you hear about the application. So that would be that. And then lastly, financial and parental information. Most of this is going to be coming from you directly, since most of you are working adults. You're going to have to classify yourself on if you're dependent or an independent student, and then your parents' information from there. If you end up being an independent, what you're going to find is it's going to give you some extra questions here to answer. They're going to run the gamut, basically tax-based information about household income, all standard stuff used to basically get you a feel for what your financial aid could potentially be. Obviously, for graduate students at the CSU, most of the time, any form of aid would actually just be loans. But I can't speak for financial aid. That's really more their office's information to share. Anyways, you would fill out that information and then go ahead and fill out the parent and guardian education level for more demographic information, save and continue. And that would be the completion of quadrant number 1.